Have you ever witnessed a single moment that felt so ordinary at first, yet ended up rewriting your entire life? A moment that arrived when you least expected it, on a quiet Saturday morning, in a place where you thought nothing new could happen. Let me take you to that morning, because for Olivia Hayes, a successful CEO and single mother, it was supposed to be just another day of silent heartbreak. But what happened at the playground that day would leave her frozen, speechless, and forever changed. The sunlit playground was alive with laughter. Children squealed as they chased each other across the grass, slides shimmered in the late morning sun, and swings creaked with rhythmic joy. Parents sat scattered on benches, some scrolling on their phones, others chatting casually, content with the happy chaos around them. But on the far side of the playground, away from the bustle, a little girl sat silently on a swing. Her name was Emily Hayes, 7 years old, bright eyes, curly hair that framed her face like a crown, and yet her lips remained sealed, pressed together the way they had been for 3 long years. Not a single word had escaped them since the car accident that had taken away her voice, and with it, her mother's hope. Olivia sat on a bench nearby, posture stiff, pretending to glance at her phone while her eyes never truly left her daughter. She tried to look casual like every other parent, but inside she was drowning. Every laugh she heard from other children stabbed at her heart. Every squeal, every shriek of joy reminded her of what Emily had lost. And as a mother, it reminded her of how powerless she was to fix it. Doctors, therapists, specialists. Olivia had written checks to them all, clung to every promise they made. But nothing worked. Emily's silence persisted, as heavy as stone. Olivia often told herself she had accepted it, that her daughter would never speak again. But deep inside, she hadn't. She couldn't. She was a CEO who led hundreds of employees, who negotiated with investors worth millions. Yet in the one area that mattered most, she was helpless. That morning, Olivia had brought Emily to the playground out of sheer desperation. Not because she thought today would be different, but because she needed to keep trying. Even if it meant just sitting and watching other kids laugh, while Emily's hands gripped the swing chains loosely, her eyes following but never joining. And then, she noticed him, a man mid-30s, rugged in a way that seemed unpolished, not rehearsed. His faded navy hoodie looked worn from use, his jeans had scuff marks near the knees, and his sneakers were far from new. He wasn't polished like the executives Olivia was used to meeting, but there was something grounding about him, something unshakably calm. He stood at the tire swing, pushing a boy about Emily's age. The boy laughed freely, that wild, unrestrained laughter Olivia missed more than she could put into words. The man's laughter followed, deep, warm, carrying a weight of lived experience. It didn't belong to a stranger. It belonged to someone who understood life's storms and still found a reason to smile. Olivia found herself staring, and when the swing slowed, he looked up and caught her watching. Instead of glancing away like most people did when they noticed Emily's blank expression, he offered her a polite nod, a small, simple acknowledgement, but in that moment, it felt like the most human thing anyone had given her all week. And then, he walked over, his son trailing shyly behind, his small shoes kicking up dirt as they moved closer. "Hey there," the man said gently, crouching until his eyes were level with Emily's. His voice wasn't forced. It wasn't coated with pity. It was soft, natural, like he was speaking to any other child. "Mind if we say hi?" Emily didn't move. Her grip on the swing chains didn't tighten, but her eyes flickered ever so slightly toward him. Olivia opened her mouth, ready to intervene, ready to protect her daughter from another awkward moment. But something about the way he waited, patiently, without rushing, without filling the silence, made her stop. He extended his hand toward Emily, palm up, a simple gesture. No expectations, no pressure, just an invitation. Emily looked at it for a long moment. Olivia held her breath. And then, with a hesitance that carried the weight of years, Emily lifted her small hand and placed it in his. His smile deepened. Not a triumphant grin, but a warm, knowing curve of his lips. He glanced briefly at Olivia, as though asking for silent permission to continue. And then he spoke again, his voice low, conspiratorial, as if he were sharing a secret just for Emily. "You know," he whispered, "my son told me the slide here is only for the bravest kids. But I told him I've met braver." Emily's lips parted just slightly, a flicker of movement Olivia hadn't seen in years. The man gently tapped her chin with his finger, then paused, waiting, patient as ever. And then it happened. In the smallest, clearest whisper, Emily breathed out a single word. "How?" Olivia's heart slammed against her ribs. Her breath caught. 3 years. 3 endless years of silence. And now, just like that, her daughter had spoken. Not in therapy, not in a controlled clinical setting, but here, in the middle of a noisy playground, to a man they had never met before. The man didn't gasp. He didn't make a scene. He simply leaned in, calm and steady. "Because," he said softly, "brave kids don't need to be the loudest. They just speak when it matters." Emily blinked at him, weighing his words. Her fingers tightened around the swing chains. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice barely louder than before. Olivia's throat tightened so hard she nearly choked on her own breath. She wanted to cry, to scream, to fall to her knees. But she forced herself to remain still, terrified that moving might break the spell. The man chuckled softly. "I'm Jack, and this," he gestured to the boy beside him, who gave a shy wave, "is my son, Mason." Emily's lips trembled as though the words had to crawl their way out, but she managed. "I'm Emily." Jack's smile grew, and Olivia noticed the way his eyes softened, as though this moment mattered to him too. "Nice to meet you, Emily," he said warmly. "Now, can I tell you a secret about this playground?" Emily nodded barely. Jack leaned closer. "The best slide isn't the big one everyone's running to. It's the small one, tucked behind the sandbox. It's faster, because the sun warms it up." Emily's brows lifted in curiosity, a look Olivia hadn't seen in years. Pure, unguarded interest. "Want to try it?" Jack asked. Emily hesitated, then turned to Olivia. And in that glance, Olivia knew she had no choice. Her throat tightened, her heart trembling, but she forced herself to nod. "Go ahead, sweetie." Jack didn't take Emily's hand, didn't treat her like something fragile. He simply walked beside her, letting her set the pace. Mason ran ahead, shouting and laughing, and Emily followed, her steps cautious but deliberate. For the first time in years, Olivia sat back on the bench, her hands trembling as she watched them disappear around the sandbox. Moments later, the faintest sound drifted back, Emily's laughter. It was light, hesitant, but it was laughter, and Olivia's world shattered, in the best way possible. At that moment, she realized something terrifying and beautiful. Her daughter's silence hadn't been unbreakable after all. It just needed the right person. And Jack, whoever he was, had reached her with nothing more than patience, warmth, and a belief Olivia herself had nearly lost. When they returned a few minutes later, Emily was smiling. Actually smiling. Cheeks flushed, eyes sparkling. Olivia had to grip the edge of the bench to steady herself. She hadn't seen that light in years. Jack crouched beside Emily once more. "She's got a lot to say," he said quietly to Olivia. "She just needs someone to ask the right way." Olivia swallowed hard, her voice trembling. How did you do that?" Jack shrugged lightly, but Olivia caught the flicker of something in his eyes, a shadow of a story he wasn't ready to share. "Sometimes," he murmured, "kindness is the only language people understand." And with that, he stood. Mason tugged on his sleeve, eager to head home. But Olivia's instincts screamed at her. This was no random encounter she could let slip away. Jack had pulled her daughter's voice back from silence, as though it had always been waiting for him. "Jack," she called out, rising from the bench. Her voice cracked. "Wait." He turned, Mason still clutching his hand. The breeze tugged at his hoodie. Would you maybe have a coffee with us?" Olivia asked, her heart pounding. "My treat. She faltered, her voice breaking. I haven't heard her speak in 3 years. Jack's jaw tightened. He looked down at Mason, then back at Olivia. For a moment, hesitation flickered across his face. Then finally he gave a small nod. There's a diner on Oak Street. It's quiet, not fancy, but it'll do. And that's where their story truly began. The diner on Oak Street wasn't the kind of place Olivia Hayes usually went to. As CEO of a fast-growing healthcare tech firm, she was accustomed to sleek cafes where people wore pressed suits and ordered triple-shot espressos. But this place was different. A retro diner with faded red booths, scratched tables, and the lingering scent of butter and syrup. When Olivia and Emily walked in, Jack and Mason were already there, seated in a corner booth. Jack sat with his shoulders relaxed, one arm draped casually on the backrest, while Mason scribbled shapes on a napkin with a blue crayon. They looked like they belonged here, comfortable, unbothered. Olivia, in her tailored blazer and polished heels, felt strangely out of place. But then she saw Emily, her daughter, glance at Mason, then giggle softly at whatever he was drawing. That sound, that simple, fragile sound, was like a miracle. And Olivia would have sat in 100 diners, in 1,000 mismatched booths, just to hear it again. Sliding into the seat across from them, Olivia studied Jack carefully. His hands were scarred, calloused. His knuckles bore faint marks that looked like they belonged to someone who had carried weight, not just physically, but emotionally. And when he shifted in the booth, she noticed it, a faint limp, the way his leg resisted movement before settling. The waitress came by. Jack ordered black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Olivia ordered tea. Emily whispered softly to Mason about pie, and to Olivia's astonishment, Mason seemed to understand her every word, leaning in as though he'd always known her. When the waitress left, Olivia leaned forward. "Jack," she said quietly, her voice careful, "how did you know what to say to her? How did you make her speak when no one else could?" Jack looked down at his coffee. For a moment, Olivia thought he might not answer. Then his voice, low and steady, carried across the table. "My sister," he said. "When we were kids after our dad left, she stopped talking. Everyone said she was broken. Teachers, neighbors, even my mom gave up. But I didn't. I just kept talking to her, waiting. And one day she spoke, just like Emily. Not because of anything clever I said, but because she finally believed someone was listening." Olivia's throat tightened. She glanced at Emily, who was now pointing at Mason's crayon doodles and whispering suggestions for what he should draw next. For 3 years, silence had swallowed her child whole. And now here she was, speaking as if she'd never stopped. "You got her to talk," Olivia said softly. Jack shook his head. I didn't get her to do anything. I just gave her space to trust." He finally met Olivia's eyes. "Kids know who's safe." And then Emily laughed, really laughed. It burst out of her so unexpectedly that Olivia nearly choked on her tea. She froze, staring at her daughter in disbelief. That laugh, unguarded and light, tore straight through her, like sunlight breaking storm clouds. The waitress returned, setting down a slice of chocolate pie between Emily and Mason. They leaned forward eagerly, sharing bites, chocolate smearing at the corners of their mouths. Jack smiled faintly, but as he reached for his coffee, his sleeve slipped back. Olivia saw it, a thin, faded hospital band, worn and frayed but still circling his wrist. Her chest tightened. "Were you recently in the hospital?" she asked cautiously. Jack pulled his sleeve down quickly, but the flicker in his eyes gave him away. "Something like that." His voice carried weight, too much to ignore. Olivia didn't press, not yet. Instead, she watched, waited, just as he had waited for Emily. When the kids were distracted by whipped cream mustaches and giggles, Olivia leaned forward again. "Jack, I don't know who you are, but I know you've just done for my daughter what teams of doctors couldn't. That matters. And I think there's more to your story than you're telling." He stared into his coffee for a long time. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the clink of forks against porcelain. Finally he spoke, his voice low, raw. "I got out of VA rehab a month ago. I was a paramedic in the Army, 2 tours in Afghanistan. On my last run, we hit an IED. My leg took the blast. My best friend," his jaw clenched. "He didn't make it." Olivia's chest constricted. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Jack nodded faintly, his eyes far away. After that, the noise was unbearable. Sirens, crowds, even the TV. Mason and I moved to the edge of town. Quiet, simple. I started volunteering at parks, helping kids. It sounds noble, but truth is, it helps me too. Olivia swallowed hard. That's not selfish. That's extraordinary. Jack gave a half smile, bitter at the edges. Most people don't think so. My resume is full of blank years and medical notes. Nobody wants to hire the guy with a limp. Olivia hesitated. Normally, she kept her personal and professional lives separate, especially when it came to Emily. But something inside her refused to stay quiet. Jack, she said softly, I run a company that develops communication devices for people with speech impairments. We use tech to give voices back. But what you did today, no device can replicate that. You reached her in a way machines never could. My team needs someone like you. Jack blinked, startled. You'd put your company on someone like me? Olivia didn't hesitate. I'd put my company on someone exactly like you. For a moment, he said nothing. His eyes softened, but disbelief lingered. Then Mason laughed, and Emily echoed it, her voice bright and sure. Jack looked at them, and Olivia saw it. The exact moment his walls began to crumble. You're serious? He asked quietly. I've never been more serious in my life, Olivia replied. Jack exhaled slowly. All right, but only if you let me buy the first round of coffee when I get my first paycheck. Olivia laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. The next morning, Olivia woke to the sound of humming. At first, she thought she'd imagined it, but when she stood outside Emily's door, she heard it clearly, a soft, gentle tune. Her daughter humming. Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she pressed her hand to the doorframe. By mid-morning, they were back at the playground. Jack and Mason were already there, tossing a football. Emily didn't hesitate this time. She ran across the grass, calling out, Mason! Throw it to me! Her voice rang out strong and free, slicing through the silence that had bound Olivia for so long. Jack leaned against the fence, watching. Olivia joined him, her heart overflowing. You have no idea what this means to me, she whispered. He glanced at her, brow furrowed. I think I do. I've seen what it looks like when the light comes back on in someone's eyes. For a moment, they stood side by side, watching their children laugh. Then Olivia took a breath. Jack, what you did. People need to know, not just Emily. Thousands of children, millions. You're more than a veteran with a limp. You're a healer, and I'm going to make sure the world sees it. Jack blinked, caught off guard. Olivia? No. She cut him off gently but firmly. For 3 years, my daughter was silent. Today she spoke. Not because of tech, not because of doctors, but because of you. If that doesn't prove your worth, then nothing will. Jack's eyes glistened, but he said nothing. And then Emily's voice rang out again, clear and full of joy. Mom, did you see that? I caught it. Olivia clutched the fence rail, her heart soaring. She hadn't just witnessed her daughter's first words in 3 years. She was witnessing her daughter's rebirth. At that moment, Olivia knew something with absolute certainty. She wasn't going to let Jack fade into the background of her life. Fate had placed him here for a reason. Weeks later, at her company's annual conference, Olivia stood on stage, her daughter sitting in the front row beside Mason. The room was filled with investors, executives, journalists. Cameras flashed, but Olivia's voice was steady. For years, my company has focused on building devices to help those who cannot speak. But today, I want to introduce someone who reminded me, and the world, that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs don't come from machines. They come from people. The spotlight shifted. Jack limped onto the stage, eyes wide at the applause rising to meet him. Emily clapped wildly, her voice carrying, That's my friend Jack. The crowd melted. Investors leaned forward, captivated. Olivia smiled through tears. And in that moment, everyone understood. Jack wasn't just a single dad with scars. He was living proof that healing wasn't only about technology or medicine. It was about patience, humanity, and heart. And Emily? She wasn't the silent little girl anymore. She was the child who had found her voice again, because someone had believed in her. As the room erupted in applause, Olivia realized the truth. Her daughter wasn't the only one who had been saved that day at the playground. Jack had too. And perhaps, just perhaps, so had she.